The restaurant glowed like a dream, bathed in golden light that made every crystal glass and polished silver fork gleam with sophistication. Clara adjusted the strap of her sleek black dress and forced herself to walk inside with calm, measured steps, though her pulse was pounding far too fast for someone who had done jobs like this before. She was not new to deception. She had sabotaged parties, broken engagements, spread rumors when the paycheck was good enough. Tonight should have been no different. The instructions were simple: attend the blind date of Adrian Steele and make it go so horribly wrong that the man would walk away humiliated, frustrated, and alone. Someone had paid generously for her interference, and Clara had learned long ago never to ask too many questions. But the moment she stepped past the velvet curtains into the exclusive dining hall, her throat went dry. There he was, Adrian Steele, the single-dad CEO, the man whose name filled financial newspapers and gossip columns alike, sat at a corner table reserved only for the powerful. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that framed his broad shoulders, a man whose presence seemed to shift the air around him. His jawline was sharp, his gray eyes cold but alert, scanning the room with the calm control of someone used to command. Yet there was something else in his expression, something Clara hadn't expected, an edge of weariness, a loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. He looked like a man used to being admired but rarely understood. Clara's heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she approached. She should have been running through her mental checklist: spill wine, interrupt conversations, feign an embarrassing story, ensure his evening ended in awkward chaos. Instead, her gaze kept returning to his face, studying him like a puzzle. She reminded herself firmly that this wasn't about him, not really. It was about the money, the job, and nothing more. Adrian noticed her before she reached the table. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a single dangerous second, Clara forgot to breathe. His stare wasn't the cold glare she expected from a billionaire CEO. It was curious, almost disarming, as though he were already trying to read her secrets. She forced herself to break the connection and sat across from him, offering a smile that wavered somewhere between polite and mischievous. "You're not what I expected," Adrian said, his voice low, smooth, but edged with something that told her he rarely trusted people at face value. "And what did you expect?" Clara countered, leaning back in her chair with casual confidence she didn't quite feel. "Someone trying too hard," he replied simply, and his mouth curved into the faintest smile, a smile that unsettled her more than his serious gaze had. The server arrived, and Clara ordered a glass of red wine, though her plan had been to knock over his first. When the glass was placed before her, she hesitated. She should spill it, laugh loudly, create a scene that would sour the mood immediately. That was what she was paid to do. But as Adrian lifted his drink with calm poise, the idea of drenching him in clumsy theatrics suddenly felt wrong. Instead, she sipped, and when she set the glass down, Adrian's eyes flicked toward her with the faintest trace of amusement, as though he knew she was hiding something. Clara straightened, trying to summon her sharpness again. "So, a blind date," she said, aiming for mocking. Not exactly what I imagined the mighty Adrian Steele wasting his time on. His gaze didn't waver. Even the mighty Adrian Steele gets lonely sometimes. The words struck her unexpectedly, slicing through the polished armor of her act. She hadn't expected honesty. Not here. Not from him. For a fleeting moment, Clara forgot the instructions and saw only the man in front of her. A man who built empires but seemed to have no one sitting beside him when the workday ended. A man with eyes that carried exhaustion as if it were an old companion. She almost asked about his daughter then, the little girl she had overheard mentioned in whispers during her research. But she bit the question back, afraid of slipping too far into truth. She had to remind herself who she was tonight. Not Clara the woman, but Clara the weapon, sent to destroy a possibility before it began. Yet destruction had never felt so complicated. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his expression softening as he studied her. "You're different," he murmured, almost to himself. "Most people want to impress me. You seem like you want to run away." Her breath caught. How could he see so much in so little time? She forced a laugh, reaching again for her wine. Or maybe I'm just bad at first impressions. He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully, but he didn't press her. The silence between them stretched, not uncomfortable but charged, like the pause before something inevitable. Clara could feel her plan unraveling with every passing minute. She was supposed to create chaos, not sit here feeling her heart stutter under his gaze. She was supposed to ruin his night, not get pulled into it herself. And yet, as she looked at Adrian Steele, the billionaire single father she was meant to sabotage, she knew she was already in danger. Not because of her mission, but because of him. Because he wasn't at all the man she expected. He wasn't the arrogant monster she was prepared to mock. He was human, complicated, maybe even broken. And broken men, Clara realized with a shiver, had a way of breaking women too. Adrian had spent years learning how to spot liars. It was practically a survival skill in his world. When you sat at the head of a multi-million-dollar empire, everyone wanted something from you. He could read greed in a handshake, desperation in a smile, calculation in a glance. But Clara was different. She wasn't smooth in her movements, not polished like the women he usually found across the table. She seemed to stumble over herself, caught between confidence and hesitation. And strangely, instead of putting him off, it drew him in. She had knocked her glass slightly too close to his, smirked as if she was testing him, and then leaned back like she didn't care whether the evening went well or not. Most women leaned forward, eager to flatter him, eager to be seen. Clara acted like she had already seen enough of men like him and wasn't impressed. For the first time in years, Adrian felt a flicker of curiosity, not the kind he indulged for business, but something personal, something dangerous. The waiter came and went, laying down plates they barely touched, because talking felt far more important than eating. Adrian found himself saying things he hadn't planned to say. He spoke about the struggles of raising a daughter alone, how the silence of his penthouse at night sometimes felt louder than the meetings that filled his days. He spoke about his late wife briefly, not in the detailed, vulnerable way of a grieving man, but in the clipped, careful way of someone who had trained himself not to dwell too long on pain. Clara listened, and he noticed her expression soften, as though she could feel the cracks he usually kept hidden. Clara, for her part, kept shifting uncomfortably in her chair. Every time Adrian looked at her too closely, she felt her resolve slipping. She wasn't supposed to care what he said. This was supposed to be just another night, another paycheck. But hearing him talk about his little girl, his daughter who still waited at the window for him to come home from late meetings, something sharp twisted in Clara's chest. She wanted to ask his daughter's name, wanted to know the color of her hair, the sound of her laughter. But asking would mean crossing a line she couldn't uncross. The plan replayed in her head. She was supposed to derail him, irritate him, make him walk away with the bitter taste of failure. Instead, she was laughing, genuinely laughing at his dry humor. She was leaning forward now, not away, caught in the magnetism of his steady gaze. Each moment she stayed, the line between her mission and her heart blurred until she could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. Adrian noticed it too. "Won't you keep looking at me?" he said softly, not accusing but curious. Her lips parted, caught off guard. "Sonch, maybe I'm just trying to figure you out." "And what have you figured out?" Clara hesitated, then said the truth before she could stop herself. "That you're lonelier than you let on." The words seemed to hang in the air between them. For a moment, Adrian didn't respond. His jaw tightened slightly, as though she had pressed on a wound he hadn't expected anyone to see. But then his expression shifted, and he nodded once. "You're right." Her chest ached. She hadn't meant to open that door, but now it was wide and she couldn't close it. She was supposed to keep this man at a distance, not step closer. But the closer she came, the more she saw the truth. He wasn't just a billionaire CEO with a reputation for ruthlessness. He was a father trying to balance impossible worlds. He was a man who had built walls so high that most people never even tried to climb them. And here she was, chipping at the edges with a few careless words. As the evening deepened, Adrian found himself unwilling to let her go. There was something about Clara that unsettled him, yes, but it also reminded him what it was like to feel alive, to talk without calculating the price of every word. He didn't know who she really was, and a part of him suspected she wasn't telling the whole truth. But strangely, he didn't care. For once, he didn't need polished perfection across the table. He needed real. When the check arrived, Adrian didn't glance at it. He signed it away as though money had never been the question, and then he looked at Clara. "Would you walk with me?" Her stomach twisted. She should have said no, should have excused herself before this went too far. But when she looked into his eyes, steady, patient, vulnerable in ways she hadn't imagined, she found herself nodding. They stepped outside into the cool night air, the city alive with its endless rhythm. For a moment, Silence wrapped around them, comfortable and heavy. Adrian spoke first. "So I don't know who put us together tonight or why, but I do know this." He turned to her, his gaze holding hers with unshakable certainty. "I'm glad you were here." Clara's throat tightened, because she knew the truth he didn't. He wasn't supposed to be glad. He wasn't supposed to feel anything for her at all. She was the trap, the interruption, the chaos someone had paid to bring into his life. And yet somehow she was the one who felt caught. Walking beside him, hearing the sound of his voice against the backdrop of the city, Clara realized the most dangerous part of all. She had gone into this night intending to ruin him, but instead, it was her own heart that was ruined. Adrian Steele had stolen it without trying, without even knowing, and she had no idea how she would ever get it back.